if. It's all hypothetical. But he was only, what, 23, 24? I think
right.
in pumping. He's a kid.
Yeah.
And, man, he was tremendous. And obviously you were a veteran at that time. And, you beat him fair and square. You got that title. But it's interesting to note, he could have won. He might have challenged you. What would have been really interesting would have been the scene you and him in 1980,
right?
With the rematch and all that, and how that would have turned out.
Yeah.
Of course, you would have had another 5 years of training. So, unfortunately, we never got a chance to see it. But for Lou, it was a great move, and for you, the rest is history. Obviously, you would go on to Terminator and some of the most iconic roles. You mentioned Franco and some of the other guys. Unfortunately, we lost your best friend a couple of years ago. He used to join us on the panel. It was always tremendous to hear you guys sharing old stories, especially with Joe Weider and some of the old days. But if you look really close, you've always been very generous with getting your friends parts in your movies. And if you look real close, Franco is in almost every movie. If you look, he's in Terminator. He's actually one of the Terminators in that sequence where the dogs are barking. And there's a Terminator you kind of see with the eyes glowing. That's Franco.
Yeah.
And Sven-Ole Thorsen, Ralph Moeller. You see these guys in all your movies, from Conan.
That's right. Franco was almost in every movie. Sometimes you saw him, sometimes you didn't. But even the one I directed, which was called The Switch, a half-hour TV show, he was in that. And, he's just so much fun to work with and all this stuff. And then that's, I think, one of the sad things when you get to a certain age, like to my age, how many people, how many close friends of mine have died over the years. It's just, it's terrible. I mean, people like Joe Weider and Ben Weider, and sometimes I feel like I'm looking out in the audience and I want to create this picture of them sitting all in the front row, and they're just having a good time. Because it's like Joe Weider, Ben Weider, then Joe Gould, and then Franco and Dave Draper, and the list goes on and on and on. And then just recently, so many of the bodybuilding champions that they're passing away and all this stuff. But they were not as close as friends as like Franco was, or Joe Gould, or Joe Weider, and people like that. And so I miss them. I miss them. Jim Lorimer. I really miss those guys because they were kind of like such incredible help to my career, because it's just, I'm a big believer in always acknowledging of who gives you the opportunities and who pushes you and helps you get where you want to go in life. And when I think about Frank, I mean, how many years we trained together and how many years he pushed me and said, Arnold, you can do it, let's go, you got to get stronger, you got to use more weight, you got to do this, and all of that stuff, and without Joe Weider, I would have never come to America. I mean, he sent me the airline ticket, and I flew over to America and never left. Right? And so it's like amazing. And Ben Weider, of course, they built the whole Federation of Bodybuilding. We wouldn't have the IFBB without him. Joe Gould, who was a very, very tough guy that owned this little gym called Gould's Gym, and everyone had to pay. And I was the only one that walked into this gym, and he came to me and he says, you don't have to pay. You can train here. You're a foreigner. I call you Balloon Belly from now on. And, because I lost against Frank Zane because I was not as cut. So he immediately, he always had the name for somebody, for everybody. Fat Arm Charlie and, Dr. Strangelove and all these kind of names. And I was Balloon Belly immediately. I was offended by that. But then nevertheless, it helped me because what he was saying is you don't have abs that are good enough to win, so therefore get your abs in shape. And then sure enough, the whole year I trained my abs and I did the crunches, worked with Sabo Kosuski, who had the greatest abs, and Eddie Giuliani and those guys here. And so they were all really helpful. And Franco then came up with America and trained with me, and from then everything turned around, and then I started winning everything. And so it was really great. But you got to recognize the people that help you, because I always say we are not self-made people. We are all products of someone's help. And so we got to acknowledge that.